warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Silsilia Wulan Dika. I'm student English Department of Rio University. So today, I want to explain about material assessment literacy or language assessment literacy learning from the teachers. LEL is a generic assessment in the literacy-specific discipline in the design tests and the performance tests. It aims at the language assessments, which is already emergent as a process-oriented phenomenon. Aims to find out the reflection that accompanies a teachers in their literacy, in the teaching and the investigating general assessment literacy versus language-related literacy. Literature is a language-specific assessment of the subject-specific assessment literacy, which focus on the language learning. Contrast in the design's language assessment tool is the formative classes. Epistemological educational assessment certainly starts in the consecutive formative assessment principle present in the paper. The explained by the assessment for learning movement, which is included in the integrated view of the assessment and the teaching to enhance learning. According to meta-analysis of the Shu and the Brown's research study on IL and LAL 2016 said one of the basic difficult features on the entity in the contextual in the discipline-oriented knowledge in the pedagogical content in the blend of the general teaching experience and the specific teaching methods for different subject areas. Sulman 1997. In the language learning teachers need to occurs their teaching and the assessment activities in the language learning context. Moreover, in the use of language in the adaptive theory and the practice. The next is language learning contrast and LAL. Language learning is today's era of the migration, globalization, and technological innovation is the view as the essential complex and then transdisciplinary process embedded in the interlingual and intercultural context. Language learners are considered as active language users who acquire and interpret language through individual meditation in the multi-component externally bound environment. Language assessment in the third millennium. The first is assessment to improve learning. Second is classroom-based assessment in the oriented through methodology and linguistics. Third, integrate language assessment. They use multi-component integrate meaningful language learning in the multimedia context. Next is assess academic context, and then multilingual assessment, and then next is multimodal language assessments. Starting from the cognitive formative approach about the assessment design in the implementation process following the culture's transition of the assessments. The process is done manually because the reflections in the part of the artifact which serves as a background data to imprint the process of the making in the tools. In the term, the purpose, the design difficulties encountered and the challenge encountered. Next is classroom-based assessment, external or internal. One of the pillars of the formative AFL approach in the use of assessment to promote learning based on the continuous feedback and the classes assessment for the integration of learnings between teaching and the assessment. Awareness to the meet students' interest in needs embraced in the FEL approach motivate teachers in the six appropriate, interesting, related, and relevant assessment activities. The FLL paradigms to basic factor the recommended the AFL paradigms, namely active student involvement and the continuous feedback based on the student performance and in these contributions of the learning for both students and the teachers. The last material is the assessing the language skill. The term of the assessing subject matter or the what could be frames a language-specific context requiring LAL. Analysis of the assessment tools show the embrace the places primary on the assessment for the language skills. Reading comprehension, followed by the writing and the listening comprehension, with almost to the speaking skill. Several students are accepted to recognize and the produce various types of the text. Literacy functional and the academic, for example, stories, letters, menus, travels, brochures, and the expository informative text. The next is monomodality, monolinguism. The next is monomodality or monolingualism. Literacy outlook multimodality as a part of the generic language knowledge. Little use the visual and the non-verbal representation in the language tools evaluation presentation using technology. Analysis of the teacher assessment effective provide the insight in the consider of the ALEL among the language teachers. The particular and the essence to which in the contrast meritorious and distant language assessment literacy categories of this own. Overall, in the answer to the first research questions, in the findings show the teacher assessment literacy include the major generic ingredients in the assessment knowledge in the skill presented in the course and the can be considered AL. The dominant factor in the teacher assessment ecology and the assessment literacy are the without doubt in that has been previously not. Crossover in the process in the becoming assessment literate in the assessment literacy associated in the which is same with the ingredient large class patterns in the limitations often has the support hands to the mostly like do the illimited presence to oral interactions. Assessment in the external massive testing can do the technical difficulties in the majority contrast divide the different consideration in the classroom curriculums. The acquisition and the development of the meaningful language testing learners assessment literacy require additional language assessment training the will often the depth engagement adjustments in the dialogue which matters relating to language or the world culture says to 2012 are the reference to as the language teaching practice. That's all for me and thank you so much for your attention and see you later guys. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.